My name is Mrs. Wang, and I am 65 years old. I've lived a modest life in a small, quiet village nestled among the mountains for as long as I can remember. Life here is simple and peaceful, but it's also a place where traditions run deep, and the expectations for the elderly are clear. You work hard, raise your children, and in return they take care of you when you can no longer care for yourself. But life doesn't always go according to plan. I married young, as was the custom. My husband, Mr. Wang, was a good man, a farmer just like his father and his father before him. We didn't have much, but we had enough. We raised a son, Lee, who was the pride of our lives. We believed that as long as we nurtured him with love, guided him with wisdom, and supported his dreams, he would be there for us when we grew old and frail. As the years passed, our village, once bustling with families, began to shrink. The younger generation, including Lee, started leaving for the city in search of better opportunities. They spoke of brighter futures, of higher earnings, and of the allure of modern life that our simple village couldn't offer. Lee was no different. He was ambitious and determined to make something of himself beyond the confines of our village. We supported his decision wholeheartedly. After all, what parent doesn't want to see their child succeed? But as he packed his bags and boarded that bus to the city, a small part of me couldn't help but worry. What if life in the city changed him? What if the distance grew too vast, not just physically but emotionally? After my husband passed away, the burden of these worries grew heavier. His death was sudden, a heart attack that took him away from me in an instant. We had no pension to fall back on, no savings to speak of. Our entire lives had been spent on the farm, where every yuan earned was put towards daily survival and our son's education. The land we owned was the only asset we had, but it was not enough to provide the security I needed for the years ahead. As I aged, the reality of my situation became more apparent. Without a steady income, without a pension, and with dwindling physical strength, the future seemed uncertain. My son, now married and with a family of his own in the city, was busy building his life. His visits became infrequent, and our conversations were brief and distant. I understood that he had his own responsibilities, but it hurt nonetheless. The tradition of children caring for their aging parents was something I had always believed in, but I began to see that the world was changing, and I needed to change with it if I were to survive. At my age, health is the most precious asset I have, but maintaining it isn't easy. I have a few chronic ailments, arthritis, high blood pressure, and occasional bouts of dizziness that make it difficult to work on the farm. There are days when getting out of bed is a challenge, when the pain in my joints is so severe that I wonder how I'll make it through the day. In the past, I would have relied on traditional remedies, passed down through generations. Herbal teas, ointments made from local plants, and a strict diet were all I had to keep the illnesses at bay. But as I aged, these methods became less effective. The village doctor, though kind, was limited in what he could offer, and trips to the city for better medical care were costly and time-consuming. I realized that I couldn't ignore my health any longer. I needed to take better care of myself, not just to avoid becoming a burden on my son, but to preserve whatever quality of life I had left. I started reading about modern medicine, about the importance of exercise and a balanced diet. It wasn't easy to adapt to these new habits. Old dogs don't learn new tricks easily, after all. But I knew that if I didn't, I'd be signing my own death warrant. With each passing day, I came to understand that my well-being was in my own hands. I could no longer rely on the hope that my son would come to take care of me in my old age. It wasn't that he didn't care. It was that his life had taken him in a different direction, one that didn't have room for the traditional roles we once took for granted. I began to embrace the idea that self-reliance was my best option. If I could manage my health, my finances, and my daily needs without depending on others, I would retain my dignity and my independence. It was a hard pill to swallow, but it was also empowering. After my husband passed away and my son Lee became more absorbed in his city life, I was left alone to confront the harsh realities of aging. Each morning, as I woke up in the small, creaky bed that my husband had once shared with me, I felt the weight of solitude. The fields outside, once vibrant and full of life, seemed to reflect my own diminishing energy, bare and tired, waiting for someone to tend to them. For years, I had assumed that my son would eventually return, that he would realize his duty to take care of his aging mother. But those hopes were slowly dashed as the calls grew less frequent, and his visits were spaced farther apart. When he did come, it was for short stays, and even then, his mind seemed elsewhere, on his work, his wife, or his young children. I understood that he had his own life to live, but the realization that I could no longer depend on him hit me like a cold gust of wind on a winter's night. I knew something had to change. I couldn't continue to live in this limbo, waiting for someone else to take responsibility for my well-being. My health was deteriorating, and with no pension or savings to fall back on, I was running out of options. The land, which had been our livelihood for so many years, was too much for me to handle alone. My joints ached from arthritis, and the once simple tasks of planting, weeding, and harvesting now felt like monumental challenges. One day, as I sat on the porch, looking out over the fields that had been my home for decades, I made a decision that would change everything. I would sell the farm. It wasn't an easy choice. This land held all my memories, the good and the bad. It was where I had raised my son, where I had spent countless hours with my husband, and where I had built my life. But I had to face the truth. The land was no longer a source of sustenance for me. It had become a burden. Selling the farm would give me the financial means to move to the city, closer to better healthcare and possibly closer to my son, though I had no illusions about rekindling the closeness we once shared. The money from the sale wouldn't be much, but it would be enough to buy a small apartment, something manageable for a woman of my age and circumstances. I consulted with a real estate agent in the nearby town, and within a few months, the farm was sold. The process was bittersweet. As I walked through the empty rooms of the farmhouse for the last time, memories flooded back. My wedding day, the day we brought Lee home from the hospital, the nights we spent sitting by the fire, talking about our dreams for the future. But those were just memories now, and I couldn't let them keep me from moving forward. Moving to the city was like stepping into a different world. The noise, the people, the hustle and bustle, it was all so overwhelming at first. I had visited the city before, but living there was a completely different experience. I felt like a fish out of water, struggling to find my place in this fast-paced environment. But I was determined to make it work. I found a small, affordable apartment on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom unit in an old building, but it was mine. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of control over my life. I had made this decision, and I would live with the consequences, whatever they might be. One of the first things I did was to familiarize myself with the local community. I started attending meetings at the local senior center, where I met other elderly people who were in similar situations. Some had children who lived nearby but rarely visited. Others were completely alone. We shared stories, advice, and most importantly, support. These interactions were invaluable to me. They made me realize that I wasn't alone in my struggles. With the move to the city, I also made a commitment to take better care of my health. The city offered resources that I simply didn't have access to in the village. There were clinics and hospitals nearby, and I didn't have to travel long distances to get the care I needed. I started by visiting a local health clinic where the doctor conducted a thorough checkup. The results were sobering. My arthritis was progressing and my blood pressure was higher than it should have been. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt a renewed sense of determination. I knew that if I wanted to enjoy my remaining years, I needed to take my health seriously. The doctor recommended a low-impact exercise routine to help with my arthritis. I began attending yoga classes at the senior center, which were specifically designed for older adults. At first, I felt awkward and out of place, but the gentle stretches and breathing exercises gradually began to alleviate some of the pain in my joints. I also made changes to my diet, incorporating more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and reducing my intake of salt and fatty foods. These changes weren't easy. Old habits die hard, but I was motivated by the thought of living a healthier, more independent life. Another aspect of city life that I had to adapt to was managing my finances. In the village, money was rarely a concern because our needs were simple and mostly met by what we could grow or make ourselves. But city life was different. Rent, utilities, groceries, everything cost money, and I had to learn how to budget carefully. I took a course on financial literacy at the senior center, where I learned the basics of managing my expenses, understanding bills, and even saving a little each month. It was a humbling experience to be learning these things at my age, but I knew it was necessary. I no longer had the luxury of depending on someone else to handle these matters for me. One of the most significant changes I made was finding a part-time job. It wasn't something I had ever imagined doing at this stage in my life, but I knew I needed a way to supplement my income. I found work as a caretaker for a local family, helping to look after their elderly mother who was bedridden. The work was demanding, but it was also fulfilling. I understood the importance of compassion and patience, having been in a similar position myself, and I was grateful for the opportunity to earn a little extra money while doing something meaningful. Through all these changes, I learned one of the most valuable lessons of my life, the importance of acceptance. It wasn't easy to accept that my son wouldn't be the one to care for me in my old age. It wasn't easy to accept that I had to leave behind the life I had known for so many years, but with acceptance came a sense of peace. I could either spend my remaining years feeling bitter and resentful, or I could embrace the changes and make the most of my new circumstances. I chose the latter. I began to see my situation not as a series of losses, but as an opportunity to grow and to learn. I learned to value my independence, to take pride in my ability to support myself, and to appreciate the small joys of life: a cup of tea in the morning, a walk in the park, a friendly conversation with a neighbor. Moving to the city was only the first step in my journey to self-reliance. While selling the farm gave me the initial funds to purchase a small apartment and cover my immediate expenses, I knew that I needed to establish a more stable source of income to ensure that I wouldn't run out of money as I aged. The prospect of financial insecurity was daunting, especially since I had no pension or significant savings to fall back on. The part-time job I found as a caretaker helped supplement my income, but I knew it wouldn't be enough in the long term. After some thought, I decided to explore other ways to generate income, focusing on methods that would be sustainable and not too physically demanding, given my age and health. I had always heard about passive income, but never really understood what it meant until I started attending workshops at the senior center. One particular workshop was focused on financial planning for retirees, and it opened my eyes to the possibilities of earning money without the need for continuous active work. After doing some research and speaking with a financial advisor, I decided to invest a portion of the money I had left from selling the farm into a fixed deposit account. This provided me with a small but steady stream of interest income. Additionally, I found a reliable investment fund that focused on low-risk bonds, which offered modest returns. These investments weren't going to make me rich, but they provided a sense of financial security that I hadn't felt in years. Moreover, I started renting out the small storage room in my apartment to a local shopkeeper who needed extra space. The rent wasn't much, but every little bit helped. I also signed up for a program that paid retirees to share their knowledge and experiences with younger generations, either through writing or speaking engagements. This was not only a way to earn money, but also a fulfilling activity that allowed me to pass on the wisdom I had accumulated over the years. One of the most important lessons I learned during this time was the art of budgeting. In the village, our expenses were minimal, and we lived off the land for the most part. But city life was different, with bills arriving every month and the cost of living being significantly higher. I had to be careful with how I spent my money, ensuring that I prioritized necessities and saved wherever possible. I started by tracking every expense, no matter how small. This helped me see where my money was going and where I could cut back. I found that by planning my meals and buying groceries in bulk, I could save a significant amount on food. I also learned to take advantage of discounts and sales at local markets. It was a far cry from the carefree spending of my younger days, but it was necessary. Another area where I managed to save was by simplifying my lifestyle. I realized that I didn't need many of the things I once thought were essential. I cut back on non-essential items like new clothes and entertainment expenses and focused on living within my means. This not only helped me financially, but also gave me a sense of control over my life, knowing that I was living responsibly and not putting myself at risk of financial hardship. While financial stability was crucial, I knew that it would mean little if I didn't take care of my health. After all, what good is money if you're too ill to enjoy life? I had already started making changes to my lifestyle with exercise and diet, but maintaining good health required a daily commitment. The yoga classes I attended were just the beginning. I soon added regular walks to my routine. There was a park near my apartment, and every morning I would go for a brisk walk, enjoying the fresh air and the quiet moments before the city truly woke up. These walks not only helped keep my arthritis in check, but also gave me a sense of peace and clarity, allowing me to start each day with a clear mind. I also discovered a senior fitness group in the neighborhood that met twice a week. The exercises were tailored to older adults, focusing on strength, flexibility, and balance, crucial aspects of physical health that become even more important as we age. Joining this group provided me with a supportive community and made exercising a social activity rather than a solitary chore. Just as important as physical health was my mental well-being. Living alone in a new city could have easily led to feelings of isolation and loneliness, but I made it a point to stay socially active. I continued attending the senior center's activities, where I met other people my age who shared similar experiences. We formed a tight-knit group, supporting each other through life's ups and downs. I also took up a hobby that I had long neglected: reading. I joined a book club at the local library, where we would meet once a month to discuss our latest read. It was a wonderful way to keep my mind sharp and to engage in thoughtful discussions with others. The club introduced me to new genres and authors I had never considered before, broadening my horizons and providing me with endless hours of enjoyment. Another key aspect of maintaining my health was regular checkups and preventive care. In the past, I had only gone to the doctor when something was wrong, but now I understood the importance of monitoring my health regularly. I scheduled annual checkups and followed the doctor's advice on managing my chronic conditions. This proactive approach allowed me to catch potential health issues early and address them before they became serious problems. I also took advantage of the free health screenings offered at the senior center, including blood pressure checks, cholesterol tests, and bone density scans. These screenings were a reminder that while I couldn't stop the aging process, I could certainly manage it. As I settled into my new life, I found that establishing a daily routine was essential for both my physical and mental health. Each day had a structure: morning walks, yoga classes, time spent on my hobbies, and social activities. This routine provided a sense of purpose and stability, reducing the anxiety that often comes with aging. The routine also included moments of reflection, where I would spend time in quiet meditation or journaling. These moments allowed me to process my thoughts and emotions, keeping my mind calm and focused. It was during these times that I often found clarity and wisdom, helping me navigate the challenges of growing older with grace. Through these efforts, I slowly began to build a new life for myself, one that was financially stable, health-conscious, and fulfilling. I was no longer the woman who relied on others to take care of her. I had become someone who took charge of her own destiny. It wasn't always easy, and there were certainly days when I longed for the simplicity of my old life in the village, but I knew that this new path was the right one for me. As I settled into my new life in the city, I began to reflect on what it truly means to grow old. For most of my life, I had believed that aging was synonymous with decline, both in health and in one's role in society. In the village, elderly people were respected, but often seen as dependent on their children, a belief I had held onto for too long. However, my experiences over the past few years had forced me to confront and ultimately reject this notion. Aging, I realized, does not have to mean surrendering your independence or your purpose in life. Instead, it can be a time of transformation and growth, where the wisdom gained from decades of living is put to use in new and meaningful ways. The most important lesson I learned was the value of self-reliance. Growing up, I was taught that family was everything and that children would naturally care for their parents in old age. While this is a beautiful ideal, it is not always practical in today's world. Children have their own lives, their own families, and their own challenges. Expecting them to shoulder the full responsibility of our care can lead to disappointment and strain relationships. By taking control of my own life, I discovered a strength and resilience I never knew I had. I also found that by being independent, I could have a more positive relationship with my son. Without the burden of financial or emotional dependence, our interactions became more about companionship and mutual respect rather than obligation. This shift in our relationship, though subtle, was significant. It allowed us to connect as equals, each living our own lives, but sharing moments of joy and support when we could. Another critical lesson was the power of adaptability. Life is unpredictable, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances is essential for maintaining a sense of control and well-being. Moving to the city, learning new skills, and adjusting to a different lifestyle were all challenging, but they taught me that it's never too late to learn and grow. Adaptability also applied to my physical and mental health. As my body aged, I had to find new ways to stay active and healthy. The yoga classes, walks, and dietary changes were all part of this adaptation process. I learned that by being flexible in my approach to life, I could overcome obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. Mentally, I had to let go of old expectations and embrace new realities. This meant accepting that my son's life path was different from what I had envisioned, and that my role as a mother was not to be his caretaker, but to support him in his journey, just as I hoped he would support me in mine. This mental shift was liberating, allowing me to focus on my own happiness and well-being rather than clinging to outdated expectations. While self-reliance was crucial, I also learned the importance of community. Moving to the city could have been a lonely experience, but I made it a priority to connect with others. The senior center, the fitness group, the book club, these communities provided me with a sense of belonging and support that was invaluable. Being part of a community didn't just benefit me emotionally, it also kept me engaged and active. The social interactions, shared activities, and common goals helped me maintain my mental sharpness and emotional health. It reminded me that while independence is important, humans are inherently social creatures, and connections with others are essential for a fulfilling life. As I grew older, I also began to see the value in sharing my experiences and the lessons I had learned. I started volunteering at the senior center, offering to lead discussions and workshops on financial management, health, and aging with dignity. I found that many others were facing similar challenges: limited income, health issues, and strained relationships with their children. By sharing my story, I could offer them practical advice and, perhaps more importantly, hope. One of the most rewarding aspects of this was seeing how my experiences could help others navigate their own struggles. Whether it was teaching someone how to budget or simply listening to their concerns, I felt a deep sense of purpose. I realized that the wisdom I had gained was not just for me, it was something to be shared to help others find their way. Another critical lesson was the importance of living in the present and letting go of the past. I spent many years dwelling on what could have been. If only my husband had lived longer, if only my son had stayed closer, if only I had made different choices. But I came to understand that clinging to the past only kept me stuck in a place of regret and sadness. By focusing on the present moment, I was able to find joy in the small things: a warm cup of tea, a good book, a conversation with a friend. I learned to appreciate what I had, rather than lament what I had lost. This shift in perspective brought me a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. Letting go of the past also meant forgiving myself for mistakes I had made, and forgiving others for their shortcomings. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my emotional well-being. By releasing the burdens of the past, I could move forward with a lighter heart and a clearer mind. Finally, I learned that dignity in old age doesn't come from wealth, status, or the care provided by others. It comes from within. It comes from knowing that you have lived your life with integrity, that you have done your best, and that you have found a way to navigate the challenges of aging with grace. As I look to the future, I am filled with a sense of calm and confidence. I don't know what the coming years will bring. None of us do, but I am prepared to face whatever challenges may arise. I have the tools, the knowledge, and the wisdom to navigate this stage of my life, and that gives me peace. I also find comfort in knowing that I have created a life for myself that is fulfilling and sustainable. I am not rich, but I have enough. I am not surrounded by family, but I am surrounded by friends and a community that supports me. I am not as strong as I once was, but I am strong enough to care for myself and to live with dignity. In the end, I have learned that aging is not something to be feared, but something to be embraced. It is a natural part of life, and with the right mindset and approach, it can be a time of profound growth and fulfillment. To those who are reading my story, I hope that my experiences offer you some guidance and reassurance. Aging is inevitable, but how we approach it makes all the difference. By taking control of your finances, your health, and your life, you can ensure that your later years are filled with peace, dignity, and joy. Remember, it's never too late to make changes, to learn something new, or to start fresh. The path to self-reliance and fulfillment in old age is not always easy, but it is within your reach. Trust in yourself, embrace the journey, and live each day with purpose and gratitude.